Hi, I'm Catherine from a small village in Norway. When I was born, the midwife handed me to my mom, and when she pulled the blanket away from my face, Mom screamed. All the village women standing around gasped. Dad came running into the room and he looked at me, horrified.
My God! Your family's curse is upon us! She looks exactly like your sister, the ugly one!
I had no idea what they were talking about then, but in time, it became much clearer. Everyone in my family thought I was the ugliest girl ever. They all had pale skin, pale eyes, and light hair, but I had dark hair. Dark eyes, and a permanent tan. Growing up, I was really lonely. I didn't have any siblings because Dad was too afraid of having more cursed, ugly children. And the other villagers acted like I had head lice and wouldn't let their kids play with me, just because I looked different. When I was 6, my parents realized they couldn't hide me forever from our relatives, so we had a family photo taken for our Christmas cards. But when Dad saw the prints, he tore them in half and grounded me. Before I went to my room, I picked up a torn photo and taped it back together. Then I drew devil horns on my parents' heads. There, that looked better. One afternoon when I was 11, I snuck out my window and was sitting under a tree when a woman approached me. She said she was from the States and asked if she could take a photo of me in a heavy Norwegian accent. I'm not an animal in a zoo that you can take photos of and laugh at.
Why would I laugh at you, child? I think you're beautiful. Can I meet your mom and dad?
She seemed nice, so I took her home. But as soon as my parents saw her holding my hand, they lost it. Before I could say a word, my parents dragged me inside and slammed the door in the woman's face. The American lady came back after a year, and this time, she brought a lawyer. She introduced herself as Betty and said she'd like to adopt me and take me to America with her. I didn't know where that was exactly, but anywhere out of my stupid room sounded great. I jumped into her arms and said yes. My parents leapt up from their seats and said no. Why can't I? You guys don't even like me. Mom pulled me into a tight hug immediately.
Nonsense! You're my flesh and blood, Catherine. Yes, your looks are a burden on my soul, but I could never give you up.
Betty took out a thick wad of cash from her purse.
Would this help change your mind?
And my parents had dashed off to pack my things faster than lightning. By the time we landed in LA, America, it was obvious that Betty actually loved me. She took me out to amazing cafes, shows, and amusement parks. Whenever we'd go out, though, I noticed people giving me strange looks, and I felt sad. So everyone here except Betty thought I was ugly too? She hired a special tutor who made me learn perfect English in less than 3 months. And sometime later, I joined the 8th grade. On my first day of school, I was getting the usual stares, but then something completely unexpected happened. I was surrounded by all these kids, and they were actually saying nice things to me. Love your beautiful tan.
I could look into your eyes forever. How about a date this evening?
Wow, you look like Princess Jasmine. Wait, was I actually beautiful here? Later that day, a pretty girl I'd seen in my class caught up to me in the corridor. Hey, Catherine, right? I'm going to call you Cat. Welcome to this dumpster of a school. Mine's the best group here, and you can join us because you're pretty. I'm Stella. And next thing I knew, I was hanging out with the most popular girls in school. After being an outcast all my life, it felt good to know that people wanted to be friends with me. But I soon discovered it was hard to keep up with them because we weren't really alike. All they wanted to do was hang out at the mall after school and buy more clothes, shoes, and makeup. I once wanted to go to a bookstore, and they looked at me like I was a freak. One day when I got to school, I found Stella and the other girls gathered around Leah, one of the girls in our group. She was crying, and when I asked what happened, Stella whispered, Leah's dad lost his entire fortune. She's like really poor now, poor thing. Leah looked miserable all the time and stopped hanging out with us after school because she didn't have money to spend anymore. I tried giving her money once, but she wouldn't take it. A few weeks later, Leah sat down with us at lunch and took out a salami sandwich out of her bag. And suddenly, Stella went bonkers. Ew, get that stinky garbage away from me. What, you're so poor now you can't afford lobster or caviar anymore? Leah's face crumpled into tears, and I felt shocked at the mean outburst. Stella, that was really rude. Oh, I've tried being nice, but I'm done. I've always let her be a part of my group even though she's ugly, but now she's poor too? It's time for her to go. That's it! I can't believe you treat a friend like this. Who cares that you're pretty or rich if you're such a horrible person? Hey, stupid village girl, watch your mouth. You would be a nobody if I didn't make you a part of my group. I'd rather be a nobody than be somebody like you. Come on, Leah, we're leaving. And with that, I took her hand and we walked away. I could feel Stella's furious glare drilling a hole in my skull, but I didn't care. From that day onwards, Leah and I got really close. We couldn't avoid Stella and her rude comments in class, but we started hanging out in the library during recess, and I'd always get extra lunch for her. Leah started coming over to my place too, and Betty always asked her to stay over for dinner. One day, I was saying goodbye to Leah at our gate when I heard a familiar laugh. OMG, Leah, are you homeless now? Has that Betty lady adopted you too? She seems to have a thing for adopting poor loser kids. What are you even doing here, Stella? Sadly, I just discovered yesterday that I live next to you. I'll have to ask my parents to move to a better neighborhood. That sounds like a great idea. Can't wait. And with that, I walked back inside. It was bad enough seeing her in school. Now it turned out we were neighbors. One night, I was outside playing with my cat when she suddenly leapt over the wall to Stella's place. I climbed over too and thankfully found her soon. I was tiptoeing away when suddenly I heard shouting from inside. I peeked in through a window and what I saw left me shocked. Stella was standing in front of her parents with her head hanging low while they were both taking turns screaming at her.
Why are you so stupid, Stella? Just look at your pathetic grades. Are you slow? How are you going to run my company one day? Run your company? I'm pretty sure she isn't even going to graduate high school. It's so embarrassing, really. All my friends are always talking about how smart their kids are, and I just want to pretend that I don't even have a daughter.
Stella burst into tears and ran away from the room. I walked away quickly, feeling really sorry for her. I knew exactly what it felt like to have parents who always put you down. Hers seemed even worse than mine. The next day in class, I wanted to tell Leah all about what I'd seen the day before, so I scribbled a note and passed it to her. Just then, Stella raised her hand and said, "Miss, Catherine just passed a note to Leah." Oh no, no! The teacher swooped down on Leah like a hawk. She snatched the note out of Leah's hand, and to my horror, she started reading it out loud.
I saw something awful yesterday. Her parents treat her like trash. What is this about?
I looked over at Stella, and her face had turned white. "It's nothing, miss. I'm sorry." But just then, Leah rose from her seat. "Oh, I'll tell you all what this is about. The paper doesn't say the name, but Kat was just telling me about how the school princess Stella gets treated by her parents like dirt. Just imagine, she goes around acting like she rules the school, but her own parents hate her." I couldn't believe what Leah had just said. As everyone stared at Stella, the bell rang and she ran out of the room in tears. While everyone walked out whispering, I pulled Leah back. "How could you do that, Leah? I told you a secret and you publicly announced it." Leah looked back at me angrily. "Kat, have you forgotten how she treated me at the worst point in my life? She deserves this. But don't you see? This makes you as cruel as her. That was an awful thing to do, and I'm so disappointed." And with that, I went off to look for Stella. I walked into the girls' bathroom and saw her feet under the door of a stall. "Stella, I know you're in there. Can you please come out and let me apologize?" The door burst open and Stella stared at me with furious eyes. "How dare you snoop around my house and spy on my personal life? And then you just tell everyone? You act like you're the best freaking person on the planet, but you're just a big hypocrite." "Stella, I found out by accident, I promise. And I never meant for everyone to know. I'm really sorry. And we have more in common than I thought. My parents were awful to me too. I know what that feels like." "You know nothing. And you're nothing like me. You're going to pay big for what you did, Catherine." And with that, she pushed me aside and stormed off. I didn't have to wait too long to find out what her payback was. I've been working on a complicated wind turbine model for years for the upcoming science fair. A day before the fair, when I went to the lab, I found my whole model smashed to pieces on the floor. As furious as I felt, I didn't want to give away Stella's name, so I told the science teacher I had no idea who it could have been. But she stormed off to the principal to look into the matter. And it turned out there were security cameras in the lab. As I watched the footage in horror, I could clearly see Stella smashing my model with a baseball bat. She was immediately called in.
Stella, you will apologize to Catherine, and then you will pack your stuff from your locker. You are expelled!
What? No, please don't do that. My parents will kill me. I'm sorry.
You should have thought of that earlier. There is no room for such behavior in my school.
Just then, I stepped forward. Ma'am, please don't expel her. Stella's saying she's sorry, and I believe her. She's my friend. We just got mad at each other. Please give her another chance. The principal's face softened, and she decided that she would suspend her for 2 weeks instead. I was so relieved. As we left the office, I turned to Stella. You were mad at me, and you took your revenge. Let's call it truce now and start over. I extended my hand to her, but she just slapped it away. Do you think for 1 second that I'm actually sorry? If I could, I'd smash your project all over again. Stop acting like the frickin' angel of Norway. I hate you. You know what, Stella? I think you just hate yourself. And just because your parents are jerks doesn't mean you have to be one. You can choose to be a better person. I didn't see Stella for the next 2 weeks, but she didn't come back after her suspension either. I found out that her parents had decided to send her to some boarding school in Europe, and I never saw her again. Leah truly regretted what she'd done and apologized, and we became friends again. We both graduated from the same university 4 years later. I'm now working as a social worker in an adoption agency. I want to help other kids find homes and families where they will be truly loved, just like I was by my adoptive mother, Betty.